Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar entitled Involving Families and Youth in Social Marketing. I'm Anita Bryant, the Lead Social Marketing Specialist for the Technical Assistant Network for Children's Behavioral Health, funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. I'd like to welcome you to today's Social Marketing Learning Community meeting today. This learning community is facilitated by myself and Michelle Boardman, who is the Director of Social Marketing for the TA Network. Our webinars are designed to support those who are undertaking the social marketing work around children's mental health. That can be in communities, states, tribes, territories across the United States, and that includes both with and without federal grants. We try hard to address these topics that are meaningful to your work and welcome suggestions on future topics. In saying this, we'd like these sessions to be interactive, and we encourage comments, questions, and insights. So please use the chat box on your screen to engage during this webinar. Below the chat box, you'll also see a spot to download the slides for today's presentation. Now, as a follow-up, you will also receive a link to today's recording for the webinar. Now, at the end of the webinar, it is a link to a brief survey, and we appreciate your time to responding as we take your feedback seriously and use it to improve these sessions. Now with that, we'd like to kick off today's webinar by introducing our speaker, Cameron McDonald. Cameron is a communications manager for Families Together in New York State, a statewide family-run organization, and he has 10 years of experience in social marketing. And he is so excited to be with us today and share his information and insights. And with that, enjoy today's webinar.
Hi everyone, my name is Cameron McDonald, and in today's webinar we will be learning techniques and skills on how to best utilize the power of the voice of the families and youth within your organization's network. You will also learn how to implement effective strategies to empower families to get involved and champion your organization's message. Some of the things we will be going over today are listed up on the slide. Things such as the benefits of involving families and youth, empowering families to act on yours and their behalf, and effective strategies on how to best affect change using the power of the family voice and their stories. So let's begin by understanding what social marketing is and what it's all about. If you're unfamiliar with the specifics of social marketing, please make sure to watch another webinar myself and an associate made that is entirely focused on social marketing and really breaks it down, what it is, and what the process entails. A link to this other presentation specifically on social marketing will be available to you at the end of this PowerPoint presentation as an additional resource. So most companies try to influence people to buy products that they're selling. Social marketing, on the other hand, is trying to influence people to become aware or take action. The quote-unquote product is human behavior, and it can be a very powerful tool for positive change. The goal or objective of your social marketing efforts might vary for each of you. Some organizations might be trying to increase families and youth's access to services. Others may be trying to reduce stigma surrounding mental health. No matter what the social marketing goal is, all the strategies we're rolling out in your marketing roadmap will be designed to influence behaviors to create positive change. Remember that change takes time, so you will always need to keep up on your social marketing and adapt it to changes within your state, your community, or your organization. So let's begin by defining the process and sharing a big picture snapshot of what the social marketing cycle looks like in practice. You can kind of see this in a really nice picture up on your screen. It breaks it down into categories for you. Getting yourself organized and breaking your plans down into a step-by-step process like up on the slide can not only help organize your efforts, but also allows you to find the best spots in your process to involve youth and families, as well as answer the question of how you can best utilize the power of the family and youth voice. You can find the snapshot worksheet up on the screen. You can find this worksheet that you see up on your screen on the resource pages at the end of this presentation as well, and I highly suggest you and your organization use it because it keeps you organized. Before we jump into how to best involve families and youth in your organization's social marketing process, it is important to quickly review the process itself. It might be helpful to see how social marketing plans work by stepping back a bit. The social marketing cycle is a great tool for viewing this as a circle, which shows the final stage, which is the evaluation / mid-course correction stage, feeding directly back into the first planning stage, the goal. It is a continuous process, as you can see. This cycle pictured up on the slide is social marketing in a snapshot. You can see here how each stage feeds the following stage. Just like all the people involved in your system of care, each piece of this circle is essential for the overall success of the plan. So we're going to quickly walk through an example of this cycle. You're always going to want to start at the goal first. So for this example, let's say your goal, which would be step 1 up at the top, is to educate local law enforcement on how to respond to a child in crisis and why it's necessary for them to respond this way. Your audience, 2, is all of the police station, let's say within a 30-mile radius for this example. 3, your message is how you create motivation for compliance. This is a need for our families in your jurisdiction. Let these families share why, and let us share how. Then you're going to look at the channels. The channels that you might deliver this messaging through are written letters, posts on their Facebook page, phone calls, emails, etc. Furthermore, you might host a free event for both law enforcement officers and families, bringing them together in their community and providing them with materials on how to deal with children in crisis. Then you can track how law enforcement has been interacting with children in crisis to see if these techniques in your social marketing efforts are paying off. Once you determine and evaluate whether or not your efforts in the social marketing cycle have been working, you adjust the plan as need be and continue the process back at your goal. And then you basically take a look at your goal again and go, what do we do here? What do we need to change to be more effective? And what's our goal now? So that's just one example, but this cycle can be used within any sort of social marketing goal. So that was just one example of how you could use it. So we just spoke about our goals being the beginning of our social marketing cycle. Well, at the end of our day, our organizations all have some pretty similar goals. The ones listed up on the screen are some of the ones that family and youth can play a huge role in by being included in your social marketing efforts. Just some of those common goals are raising awareness of health needs of children, youth, and families, showing that systems of care are effective, developing support for building and sustaining health services and supports, promoting social inclusion, and increasing the number of families and youth seeking services and support. So why is it important to involve families and youth in your social marketing plan in the first place? Families and youth are their own best storytellers, and involving them in your organization's social marketing efforts is not only important to the key principles of system of care, but is a surefire way to increase the chances of reaching your social marketing goal, which, if you remember, was step 1 on the cycle I just showed you those 2 slides ago. Involving families enhances your social marketing strategy by providing an authoritative voice with firsthand experiences and stories, and this adds fuel to many aspects of planning and implementation. Family organizations can contribute family collective experiences and voice in advocacy and outreach, while also providing the input of a diverse audience. Simply put, having families involved is crucial to your organization's overall success in having its message heard. As many of you know, it is not uncommon for many family-run organizations to operate with limited funds and a small staff that have multiple roles within the organization. Time and expertise often prevent family-run organizations from using social marketing strategies to reach out to families, funders, and policymakers. Involving families and youth in your social marketing efforts can help alleviate some of these obstacles. Adding them might give you the manpower you need to reach your plan's goals. It also allows families and youth to feel more involved in the process that concerns them and adds a sense of empowerment and legitimacy to your process. Now that you know some of the great reasons to involve families and youth in your social marketing efforts, you may be asking yourself, how do I engage families and youth to get behind our mission and lend their voice to our cause? We'll be going over some of the tactics on how you can do so listed on this slide in further detail. We'll talk about how to engage and how to build and maintain relationships with families and youth in your network, how to make yourself more accessible to families and youth by understanding and meeting their basic needs, how to help train families and youth so that together they convey a strong, unified message, which again adds legitimacy to your cause. And also, how to communicate effectively with families and youth so that your messaging to them comes off crystal clear and they feel heard loud and clear. So we're going to be talking about building and maintaining relationships with the family. Using other family and youth organizations as a launching pad to increase your access to more families and youth through their networks further increases the reach of your own organization's message. Here are some tips to help these relationships thrive. Work with families to clearly define each other's roles in the social marketing plan and come to an understanding on how to best involve families in any activities related to the plan. Clear communication is key here. You'll also want to get acquainted with other local family and youth organizations and support groups and ask for a chance to talk with them about social marketing. This can be very beneficial for both your organizations. You'll want to value the family's input. It lets the family know that they can trust you and turn to your organization as a lead authority on the issues that they may face. You'll also want to respect and value the priorities of different family and youth organizations. You want to work collaboratively on the issues you agree on and agree to disagree on any issues your own organization might not prioritize. You'll want to seek out, respect, and value the diverse identities and backgrounds of families within your community, and make sure to include as many sets of different family experiences as you can. Remember, variety equals power. Provide validation and appreciation for individual family members and family organizations. For example, giving some sort of awards, recognition, or even prizes lets the families and youth know you care about their involvement and also may incentivize the people to act. So how do we meet families and youth's needs? On top of the usual time constraints that come along with being a family member, many family and youth also work full-time jobs as well, or perhaps live in an area where public transportation is expensive or even totally non-existent. Families may have signed on to your message or mission, but they can't act on it unless they have the time, availability, or other critical needs met first. As an organization that wants them to be involved in your social marketing efforts, you can increase that participation greatly by meeting families in the middle of the road, or help alleviate some of the barriers that would otherwise leave them unable to take action. Some good examples of how to do this are listed on the slide above. You can provide child care or dependent care. You can assist with transportation by arranging for carpooling, gas reimbursement, parking, taxi vouchers, bus tokens, or also hold meetings in locations accessible by public transportation. Just a quick example our organization does speaking to this is an example. In New York, we have an annual Legislative Awareness Day for our families to come speak to politicians. So we bring in families from all over the state, and we have several buses we hire to bring people into the capital of Albany, as well as drive them back to their state's region at the end of the event. By doing this, we grew our attendance at this event by 4 times the amount of what it originally was. You can also hold meetings at times families can attend, coordinating both a day and an evening meeting if necessary to accommodate family schedules. You can also offer fair and reasonable compensation for families' time and expertise. You can provide snacks, beverages, or full meals if the family is held, if the meeting is held during typical meal times of the families. You can use technologies such as web conferencing, email, and conference calls to eliminate the need for face-to-face meetings. And you can also schedule phone call breaks during meetings and or provide phones, phone cards, or cell phones so that the families can be reached or reach others in case of emergencies. Providing training to families and youth. You'll also need to provide some training to families and youth in your area if you want to be on the same page. Figuratively speaking, make sure you are all using the same language when it comes to the issues or policies you work on. This greatly helps increase the reach of your message and makes you appear organized and unified to whichever stakeholders you are trying to reach your message with. Make sure the family members and youth are familiar with the technology that you're using to communicate or reach them with. If they aren't familiar, perhaps offer them training on it. You can create family and youth ambassadors for your organization to get the message out to their own communities. This technique especially can be very effective. Whether empowering or cautionary, If families are comfortable enough to share their personal stories publicly to further your organization's message, be there for them as a resource or coach to help them. Sometimes all it takes is one powerful, impactful story to become a catalyst for massive change. The stories and experiences of the families you work with are the roots of your organization. If a family does decide to share their personal story for a good cause and it reaches the attention of the press, you should heavily prepare families and youth for any interaction with the media they may have, and never leave them alone with a member of the media. In other words, sharing their personal stories can be a very emotional thing, and it is important you be there for them while they help convey the message you are trying to achieve towards your social marketing goal. Now let's talk about youth specifically for a few slides. Being youth-guided is one of the main principles of systems of care. This means youth in your organization should have a voice in identifying needs and supports, as well as in decision-making, including communications and social marketing efforts. Youth are important messengers and marketers to other youth. Engaging them when your social marketing plan is developed is essential to your goal of success. It also gives your organization and its mission longevity, ensuring it has a place in the future of system of care. Youth's involvement and feedback will ensure that the messages you develop for a youth audience will resonate with other youth and young adults, and that the channels you choose to deliver those messages make the most sense. In addition to being valuable social marketers, young people benefit personally from being involved. Many youth feel a greater sense of hope, purpose, and agency when involved in work that uses their lived experience, further contributing to successful long-term recovery. Effective social marketing is audience-driven. Youth and young adults are critical players in developing messaging, identifying channels, and pre-testing your communications, saving you time and resources. All parties benefit when the youth are involved. So let's continue talking about youth for a little bit. This image up on your screen is referred to as Hart's Ladder. Roger Hart is a child's right academic currently serving as a professor at NYU. And as you can see on here, steps 1 through 3 are considered not participation on the ladder. And the levels of actual participation where they start are from step 4 upwards. This range is where you should aim to be within your organization, somewhere between step 4 and step 9. The higher up the ladder you rank, the more likely you are to engage youth and receive their participation and the benefits that come along with it. To make sure there is sufficient youth involved at all times, it is necessary to include multiple youth perspectives with similar experiences to your key audiences. This way, youth from all backgrounds can contribute their diverse points of view. Working on social marketing with youth requires building relationships with them, engaging them, and training them, and also communicating openly. So here are some strategies for building relationships with the youth. You're going to want to develop trust with youth through attentive listening, respect, and an attitude of genuine curiosity for youth feedback. You're going to want to establish boundaries at the start to keep the expectations clear between yourselves and the youth. You're also going to want to remind youth that they can be honest and that their feedback is both valuable and important. You'll want to get acquainted with local youth organizations and support groups to talk with them about social marketing. You'll want to treat youth as equal partners and communicate openly and honestly. You'll want to seek out and respect diverse youth in your community. And you'll want to validate and show appreciation for youth as they share their perspective, experiences, and personal stories. We discussed before that if families' specific essential needs are met, it provides them the opportunity and time to be more involved in your organization's social marketing efforts. The same exact idea goes for youth. And while some of those needs may intersect, the specific needs for youth can be a little different than those of families. With youth, you'll want to ask what their basic needs and priorities are, just like you would with families in that case. You'll want to allow youth to invite their family members or friends to meetings if it makes them more comfortable. You'll want to allow them to attempt to hold meetings in locations familiar to youth, such as schools, community centers, etc. And similar with families, arranging for carpooling, gas reimbursement, parking, taxi vouchers, or bus tokens, and holding meetings in locations that are accessible by public transportation goes a long way and increases your involvement, also with the same with youth as it does families. You want to coordinate meeting times around school or extracurricular activities like clubs or sports. You'll want to offer fair compensation or a stipend for the youth's time and expertise. You want to provide beverages and snacks or full meals if the meeting is held during meal times. And again, you'll want to use technology such as web conferencing, email, and conference calls to eliminate the need for face-to-face meetings, just like what we talked about before with the families. You also want to seek opportunities to incentivize participation, including credit for classes, internship experience, or letters of recommendation, and this can be seen as a win-win scenario for both youth and your organization. Now let's continue to discuss families and youth as a whole again. Involving families and youth in the planning of your conference involve families and youth in planning of your conferences and events, and try to determine with them through committees or discussion groups what would encourage other family members and youth in their community to attend. Then try to implement some of their input, both the fun and the practical ideas, to help create a family and youth-friendly environment at these events. Hire or recruit spokespeople to help spread the word about your organization and system of care. Spokespeople who make family and youth feel empowered. Spokespeople make family and youth feel empowered and engaged. It's very important to get the honest feedback of families and youth who attend your activities or events, as that feedback and criticism will directly aid you in making your organization's future activities even more engaging and powerful. So how do we utilize the families and youth in the content creation for your marketing, your social marketing? One of the harder jobs a marketer has is either creating or finding great content relevant to your goal, which, as we discussed in that earlier slide, was step one. Involving families and youth in this process can heavily alleviate some of that burden, while also making the content both more effective and family youth guided. Families and youth can help in almost all steps of the process, creating, testing, and even distributing your organization's content and message far and wide through many different mediums and channels. The examples on the slide are just some of the contributions families and youth can make towards your organization's goal. Families and youth can also be given the opportunity to have a powerful voice in speaking on behalf of your organization and sharing their personal stories. Their voice and their stories can be one of the most powerful channels of distribution at your organization's disposal. So we're coming closer to the end of this presentation, and I wanted to leave you with a few key takeaways from the presentation on what you can do to increase family and youth involvement in your social marketing efforts. You want to remember these key things. Motivate families and youth to participate in social marketing by demonstrating examples of successful activism. You want to remember to partner with your families and youth and also organizations to locate other resources in your community to identify the best way to reach families and youth. And remember, you want to keep families and youth up to date when they have not been able to attend a meeting or activity. You'll also want to enlist families and youth to recruit fellow families and youth. And very important here, always make sure to promote the importance of family and youth involvement in social marketing within a system of care and work to sustain it. Last, but certainly not least, I want to discuss the families we work with daily in this field. One of the best ways of involving families and youth in social marketing is to let them know you care. So you're going to want to celebrate and honor our families and youth. Make sure to recognize and celebrate families and youth's achievements, both big and small. Families give your organization the roots to stand tall and strong, and it is important to make sure they know that you as an organization appreciate their efforts by giving awards, letting them know their hard work is appreciated. People are much more likely to act when they know their efforts are recognized. I have some resources on the next few slides for you, and then we're going to take some time for questions, if there are any. I've also left my email at the end of this PowerPoint, so if you have any additional questions after the fact, feel free to shoot me an email. I want to thank you guys and everyone for joining me today, and thanks to SAMHSA and the Institute of Innovation and Implementation at the University of Maryland School of Social Work for their assistance in producing this webinar. So I'm going to go through the resources with you real quick here. And again, these will be available after the webinar, and also this will be available as a PDF after this entire slideshow.
Well, thank you, Cameron, so much. This has been insightful and a lot of information. I see all the resources that you have, and this is great. And I definitely encourage everyone to definitely download and look at the resources listed. They go back to a lot of our documents that we have on our website here at the Institute under social marketing. And we provide information on social media, how to create a social marketing plan from beginning to end, and as well as how to deal with media and getting your main point across. Cameron, can you go into some more detail about, particularly with youth, because this seems to be a evolving question on the types of social media platforms that you use and how do you use them when you are trying to get youth involved in social marketing?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of them, so they might be using some of the same ones that we probably would use for families, such as Facebook and just general email too. Sending out your messages over a listserv. But more specifically, they're using apps that family members aren't necessarily using, and these apps are always either changing or there are new ones that are kind of becoming popular. So some of the more popular ones right now, and I'm sure if there are parents here or family members, they know that their kids are probably on Instagram. So that's a little bit more popular within, and actually I think we have a presentation about this that we did too, kind of breaks down where the families are focused more than the youth. And I don't think I left that in the resources, but I could also send that to you, Anita, and you can send out that presentation, maybe a follow-up to the listserv from this presentation here. But just to make it short, they're more on Instagram, Snapchat, and then most recently TikTok too. So even here in New York, we're kind of figuring out, so what's the best way for us to get involved in these things too, so we can reach the youth there as well. We see them using less Facebook and less email, probably their parents do. So does that kind of answer your question? That they'll be on different platforms, definitely, if that's what you're asking.
No, that was great. Yep.
Okay,
continue. I'm sorry.
Nope, that was it basically.
No, and you pointed out a really good point that the youth is on particularly Snapchat or Instagram, where the families, which are older audience, is still on Facebook. So when you're crafting your messages, you need to think about not just on one platform, but on multiple.
Right, and the marketing you do towards whoever you're trying to reach is, your audience is, and that's in that circle there I showed you in the beginning of the slide, but your audience is going to determine the avenues or the channels that you're going to be putting the messages over or out through. So your audience will be determining that. So you want to go where your audience is, and that does vary between youth and the adult population that we work with.
Great. And then another question is, when you're creating this plan and you're getting your organization involved, like you said, the families and youth, how do you keep them? Is it just a one-time initiative, or are we looking at a long-term implementing it into the plan ongoing? How do you differentiate between the two? Because a lot of times we think about maybe Awareness Day, and then after that, how do we keep them engaged or involved so it's just not a one-time deal or one-time shot with them?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I think we briefly touched on it in this presentation, but we want to keep them updated if they're not, because life happens. So not everyone's always able to make a phone call or a webinar or the meetings that might be going on, and we want to keep them updated. So after you do these webinars or these meetings or anything like that, even an event, you want to try to send something out to the people that weren't there like whether it's over Facebook and more generally, like you can, or a video saying, hey, look what happened here at this event, or you want to do a live video saying, look at the speaker we had here speaking at this event. That's one way to do it. Or you can even be more specific, and you can send out some talking points over, your email to them if they're, signed up on a list or something for a particular event or meeting. You also want to just make sure that you're keeping it fun too. I mean, you want to make sure you're reaching out every once in a while, not just about the how do I put it? Not just about the important stuff, but also just kind of keeping it light too, especially with the youth. Just putting things out there that will entertain them on your social media channels, and also things that will interest them too. And not only youth, that means families too. So again, you just want to think about always go back to that circle and that chart in the beginning of the thing if you guys are ever wondering. And then that will kind of answer a lot of the questions you may have. So you'll think, all right, so our audience, and what do we want our messages to be based on this audience? And yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, that's great. And we have some more questions in the chat room.
Okay.
I have one from Greg, and his question is, how do you communicate with youth if you see them making a poor decision, given that we want them to make better decisions, or if we want them to make decisions? So how do you communicate when you see them making poor decisions, given that you want them to make decisions?
That is an age-old question. I'm not sure I'll be able to answer it on the call today, but that is a really good question. It might vary by the specifics of what's going on. Hopefully that they can look at you as somebody that they can respect and trust. So, and I think I mentioned that in the presentation as well. You want to be again, somebody that they can respect and trust. Your organization should be somewhere they can turn. And so hopefully you can lead by example and show them, this is maybe not the way to do this, or this could be even dangerous for you to do it this way. And, if you've gained their trust, hopefully they'll listen to you. You can't control anybody, but you can try to hopefully influence them by having them trust you and respect you.
And I think, the next part he has an example. Thank you so much for the example, Greg. He says, you allow them to make a slogan, so this is their input for their group, but the slogan isn't very good, or the phrase is awkward. So I guess it's more of, once you get the input and get them involved, it may not be in line with the mission or organization, and it may not be up to par. So how do you handle that?
Yeah, that's a great example, Greg. So, and actually we've had similar things. So we have a youth component here at our organization as well called Youth Power. And we've had similar issues arise before where they're creating something like a slogan, for example, like you're using. And when it comes back to us, we're like, ooh, maybe we don't like that, or it's a little awkward, or, we don't think it sounds exactly right. And it's the way we deal with that is we have open dialogue about it. We say, we feel this way because of these reasons. Also, you have to kind of maybe look at yourself too and say, well, maybe it sounds awkward to us, or it doesn't seem like it's phrased right to us too, but are we the market that they're going after as adults, and family members, or are they going after other youth and their messaging? And if that's the case, maybe we should, try to trust them on that a little bit too, unless it's something egregious, obviously. But in that case, then you guys should, the best thing you can do is just, and I think I mentioned this in the PowerPoint as well, just keep that dialogue open and just keep it very clear. And also the expectations from beforehand too, like, are we going to use this slogan no matter what they create, or is this just an opportunity for them to submit something and then we review it and put out the final thing? You want to make those expectations clear with the youth that you're working with from the very beginning, so there's no hurt feelings or anything like that at the end. And yeah, just keep that dialogue open and just communicate with each other. And I think that you'll find that they'll respect you more, especially as these youth organizations, if you keep that dialogue open and just act very honest with them and don't put the kid gloves on, so to speak. Talk to them like equals in a way. And I think that with that respect kind of comes a dialogue that hopefully can solve that issue.
That's great, and what you're saying, which is perfect, is that as you get an input from outside of the organization or your group, you definitely leave yourself open to just any kind of input, but to be open to it because we're also asking for their eyes and their feedback where we may not see. So
Correct.
definitely great. And we have another question for Melanor. If I'm not pronouncing it right, I'm so sorry. Is any advice on setting your social marketing goal as a system partner working with family partners? Melarine, that's who it is. Thank you.
Any advice on setting your social marketing goal
As a system partner working with family partners.
So it's the way that's worded. It's just such a broad question. It's hard to answer that specifically. It depends on what your goal is as a system partner with those families. So if I had maybe a more specific example, I could maybe offer a path forward with that. But again, I would always suggest going back to that cycle. And really, I mean, so that cycle that we had in the beginning, that circle with all the different stages, that is basically what the marketers at any other, any marketers in the world use. So like Nike uses that same sort of system. Ford, anybody like that. Anybody selling anything uses a similar sort of system like that. But what the difference is we tweak it a little bit to be more specific to this field of work and social marketing. But that should be a very, very good guide for you as you try to answer these questions yourself. So you're going to always want to start with that goal and say, all right, so what was the question? It was from as a system partner working with family partners. So you'll say to yourself, who are we as system partners? Who are the family partners we are trying to reach? And what's our goal here? Are we trying to just reach them? Are we trying to convince them of something? Are we trying to get them to work with us on something? And based on what that goal is, that's where everything else is going to fall into line as you go around that cycle. And yeah, I mean, almost any questions you have about this, almost any of them, if you kind of break it down enough and you look at that cycle, you can probably find the answers. And I highly suggest doing what we did as a team here in New York is, our communications department got together with our CEO and some of their youth representatives too from their department, and we got together and we kind of went through that checkbox, and we were like, all right, so what's our goal here in the social marketing cycle? What do we want? Who's our market here? We did it together, and I think you'll find out, when you put it like that and you kind of work with a team doing that cycle, it becomes a lot clearer what your next steps are. And also what steps worked and what steps didn't. And remember, that's the last part of that cycle, which is saying take a look at it as a whole, what you did, and then revise or change things if they did work, or if they didn't work, rather, for the next time around.
Okay. No, that was great. And then I'm trying to see, I think we're almost about wrapping up, maybe a little bit early, but do you have any input as we end the year off? And a lot of us are starting to think and look over our plans for 2020, new initiatives, old initiatives, and any advice as they're creating these plans and moving forward, and anything new that they should look out for as they're doing that.
Nothing new specifically. I mean, as I meant, maybe the only new stuff is, always keep track of where the people are, your audience is. And as we mentioned earlier, the youth are using TikTok is really popular now, and that's kind of shot up. If you haven't heard of it, that's this like video app with like short little videos, like I don't remember the amount of time exactly, like 30 seconds or something. And it's super, super popular with youth right now, and almost all of them are on there. So and that's happened within the last year or so that TikTok became super popular. Not even, like probably the last 7 months or so. So, and that's, I think like their numbers have almost grown up to Facebook numbers now, which is the largest network. So yeah, remember, always you have to look at where your audience is, because it's not always going to be the same spot. If we were looking 10 years ago, you're probably getting a lot more involvement through email than you were getting through Facebook, for example. So just always stay up the trend with where your audience is, whether they're youth or families. And also, just what I mentioned before, too, if I could leave you with any last advice, is to get your team together, or if it's whether it's a small team or a big team, and go over the marketing cycle, that social marketing cycle, and use that worksheet that we also put in here, too, to kind of give yourself a path forward. And if you find time to do that in the beginning of the year, that's great, because then you have a good plan for the year. And you can also use those plans and the cycle to do short-term sort of plans or long-term sort of plans. So if you have a longer-term plan that you want to implement in the beginning of the year, I definitely recommend using those resources we provided.
Great. And I see that we have any more questions. I want to just leave it open. If anyone has anything else they would like to share or input. I know, Cameron, you guys are actively working in New York State, and not just on social. I know we talked heavily on social media, but I'm glad you included a lot of the traditional as far as handing out news releases and press releases and just documents that are more of the traditional sense outside of, because there's still a connection when people put a face to everything. So that's really
Absolutely.
good. Yeah. So don't rely so heavily on social media and technology, but also stay on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got it. So we are about to close out, and we thank you guys so much for joining us. Please fill out our survey at the end. We would like to get your feedback. Oh, wait a minute. We have some more questions. Sorry about that.
Oh, good.
There is actually one more from Michelle, and she said there's actually a class action suit in the U.S. against TikTok for sending or using data to China. So something to be aware of. Thank you, Michelle.
So that is good to know. It is a Chinese company, and there has been some controversy over that. So yeah, that is something you might want to consider and read up about before you start a campaign on there. I'm not sure the specifics to that, and I can't really speak on the specifics about TikTok. But yeah, I did hear that too, and it is a Chinese-owned company. I think that their government is involved in that. So, but I don't know the specifics with that. So just be aware that you should know the platforms that you're using. Hopefully, so don't just jump into something without really learning about the platform and also learning not only how to use it but how it's used too. How it's recognized. Is this kind of maybe something that's not appropriate to be on, or is this something that is appropriate? That's something like that too. Not only how to use it.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off of that, myself and Michelle, we have done research on Discord and another one that deals with gaming. Yes. So, and what we were finding out is just, you really have to take the time to research these platforms. Even though they become popular, please take the time to research privacy issues, any settings, and appropriate content, because sometimes they are so open source, you leave yourself open to not control what people could say and respond, especially if we're dealing with the topics that we're dealing with children's mental health. So that's something to also to consider. And Roxanne has said if you're marketing different programs, it's better to focus at one at a time. So if you're marketing different programs, is it better to focus one at a time as opposed to at one time all together? That's a question.
That is a good question, Roxanne. And again, that might be specific to your organization personally. So do you have enough staff to be handling this all at once? If it's only you and another person, perhaps, maybe it is better to focus on one thing at a time versus a bunch of different things at once. And I can give you, so I don't know how to answer that for you because that's going to be really specific to the manpower you have or the funding you have. But the thing I can say to you is it is better to do something on social media or any other marketing efforts. It is better to do something well than try to do a bunch all at once and just subpar. So if you can try to focus your efforts on one or two different platforms or one or two different programs, and you can do those things really well, and you see when you're doing your marketing cycle, that your social marketing cycle rather, that it's effective and it's working when you're reviewing your plan at the end and changing things around. If you're seeing it's working, keep that up. You don't want to be spread too thin. That's my advice there. And if you can, try to focus on what's working.
And we have another question for Antoinette. Annette, do you have a standard permission form that you use for youth and families before using them in social media?
Yes, I think we do. Yeah, I'm trying to think back. We have a bunch of different forms for different events regarding youth, but I think we do have them sign a release or something like that. And it's dependent on the scenario. Like if we're doing an overhead shot of like a big event where there are hundreds of people, we're not necessarily doing that. But if we're using them in a campaign where we have them on camera talking about their experiences or something like that, yeah, we usually do have some sort of permission form that allows them to use them on camera, just giving us permission to do that. And that's always smart. I mean, I would always suggest to cover your butts. You should always try to cover yourself if you can, and that is one good suggestion. And that is a good point, Annette. Or Annette, rather.
And another question, if you're involving them in social media, to what capacity do you have them involved in, not just creating messages and at the table? How do you have them involved, let's say, if you are short in manpower and they may be good at social media, and have them manage accounts? How do you handle that, if that's a good way to go?
Well, I would never have them specifically manage accounts, probably. If that's the issue, if let's say your organization is having trouble kind of figuring out how to use a certain platform, whether it be using Constant Contact to send out emails or Facebook or Twitter, etc. If it's one of those things and you have youth available to you guys and they can kind of show you, that'd be better to have them probably kind of an over-the-shoulder sort of thing, teach you how to do it versus doing it themselves, because you really want to try to limit your access to your account from anyone outside, like one or two trusted people within your organization. And that goes for any platform, whether it's email, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. So you probably don't want to have them running it for you, unless like maybe they're an employee there and they're, someone that's been there and their job is basically to help run that. That's their whole job. But I wouldn't just have, volunteers come in or volunteers take over that for you, because then you start to lose control. And also, God forbid, like the password changes or that person leaves or goes somewhere else, or you're not able to get a hold of them, then you lose everything. So that's something you definitely don't want to do, best practices wise. But that being said, you can also involve youth in many other ways, and that's more so the content creation that we talked about within the slideshow. You can get them to create some good memes or some good infographics, perhaps. So that sort of stuff they can be really helpful with. And that's, at least within our experience here in New York. Also getting the word out to their friends about an event, too. So, maybe share it with a bunch of youth that know your organization and have been involved in your organization before, and say, hey, can you guys send this out to people in your network that you think would be involved or want to get involved? So, your friends or somebody you might know that needs this sort of event or this campaign. So, they'll be really good for helping spread the message to other youth. That's a really important thing. And also, remember, when it's coming from a youth, they're more likely to trust it versus it coming from your organization necessarily. So they're more within the dissemination of the message itself, more versus like, giving them administrator access or anything like that. I actually wouldn't recommend doing that unless they're an employee there and that's their job.
And then to go to extend that question a little bit further is about the families. We talk a lot about youth. Now the families who tend to possibly be an older demographics. Can you discuss on some ways that you've had them successfully participate in social marketing and to their capacity, where they may not be on all the social networks or on a few, but other ways that they can bring their talents to the table and their voice?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll go back to that. I think I talked about it before. It was what we call Family Awareness Day, which is like a legislative day we hold where we have all these families from all over New York State come in to Albany, the capital, and we hold this huge event where we talk about the policy priorities that we're talking about that year. And that we get mostly family to that, and then it's probably like 75% families and then 25% youth at those or at that event particularly. And something we do there is we created like what we call a social media bookmark, and it's really kind of a bigger bookmark. It's like palm card more, and it kind of gives a breakdown for the families of like, what is the best place to put, like, so we want them to be letting folks know they're at this awareness day. These are the policies I care about, and we also give them language too. So for example, we'll put, I wish I had a picture I could show you guys right now, but it's, our logo, the social media sites we're using, our hashtags we're using, our handles on the different sites, saying so. For example, we'll put some example tweets in there or some example Facebook posts. So saying, support this bill, or I'm at the Families Together or I'm at the Families Together event, and then we have a hashtag, for that. And then we teach them how to @ us on there. It's kind of hard to explain without showing it to you guys, but it basically breaks down what the steps would be that they need to do to make an effective post. And that also helps with the messaging, too, on our end as an organization, because now that's out there on the Internet, and, these politicians are seeing it, the state is seeing it, the governor is seeing it. He's seeing that it's a unified message with a unified hashtag, all coming or having to do with our organization, and that there's hundreds of posts or, hopefully hundreds of posts, all with a unified message too, saying like, I support this or I don't support this, etc., depending on what the policy issue is. But it really makes your unified voice strong too by doing something like that. And that all that takes was just making something and printing out a little piece of paper and handing it to all the people that come in. And that's just one example. But there's also, lots of other ways too. You can do that through email. You can kind of explain to them, here's how you can join our organization's pages, and here's how you can share things. We've done that before. So there's lots of different ways that you can kind of help them. And also, I think I mentioned in the presentation, try to make families and youth familiar with the tools you guys are using and how they can best use that to help you guys. Communicate that to them in your messaging.
That was great. Thank you so much. And that is, I think we have one more question. Lois,
okay.
What will be some good topics for family meetings?
Well, are you trying, so again, without knowing the specifics, that might be hard, but if you're trying to get more families involved, for example, within your community, maybe just don't even start with the meeting. So let's say you're trying to start this organization from the very beginning, and you are trying to reach people in general, and you're trying to find family members. I would recommend, talking to other family organizations, like I recommended in the presentation, and trying to see if they can help you get any access, and if they have any events where you could be at, and talk to their families that already are part of their organization or involved in their organization. And the other thing, too, is if you're trying to get new families from scratch or something, and that's just for this example because I'm not sure, what specifically they're talking about in their question. But if you're trying to get new families, you might want to hold just a family-friendly event, like a screening of a movie or something, or like just a get-together with, if you have a smaller town, just like a little luncheon or something like that. That might be good, depending on who your market is, how many people you're trying to get, and what you're trying to get them to do. So you don't have to start out with the this is who we are, this is what we're doing thing. Get them in the door with some food, some company, some family-friendly events. Some performances there. Maybe there's a local artist or something. That sort of stuff, because then they'll be more inclined to come, and then you can talk to them about your message and that sort of stuff, and then they're more inclined to listen too. I hope that helps.
Yes, that was great, and I'm just going to see if we have any more questions as we are on our final. Oh, Lois says thank you. I guess it definitely helps.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Lois. Good. I'm glad it helped.
And yeah, so we have a few more minutes. Just want to give some time if anyone has any more questions or input or insights they want to share.
Great.
You got some great information. Thank you so much. And you had a lot of questions afterwards, Cameron. This has been really engaging, insightful for everyone involved. I hope everyone takes the opportunity to go through all the resources you provided. I also provided a link in the chat that lists to all of our resources on social marketing, and that ranges from creating a team, again, to social media, just how to make a plan. So please take the time and go through that when you get a chance. And I see you they're showing any more. And then Cameron has provided information to follow up with him as well if you have any questions, if you don't have anything today. So
yep, thank you. Yeah, anyone feel free to email me if you guys have any questions at all that you come up with afterwards. Feel free to email me. That's my personal email. I'm not going to charge you. I'll just talk to you. So, yeah, feel free to reach out to me. So, and I'll see if I can answer your questions or put you in the right directions to find that answer.
Great. Now, what a deal. Cameron at your disposal at any time. So again, we thank you here at the Institute, and we are thankful for your participation. Again, a Technical Assistant Network for Children's Behavior Health, funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We'll be continuing these webinars in the future. Please send back your feedback in the survey. And again, you guys have a great day and a happy holiday. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.